Uh-oh.
In her last two fights. Good way hitting him from that way down.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this, what services as unofficial confirmation of what I told you over 2 weeks ago, per a tweet from Dake Donovan, veteran boxing scribe Jake Donovan, who said, full Lomachenko versus Kambosos card expected to be announced tomorrow. Lineup for main card for May 11th, ESPN telecast May 12th. Local in Perth.
What?
Cards on the 11th in America, the 12th in Perth, because the Australians are, in fact, in the future.
What's it like?
You're going to have Carlos Quadras versus Andrew Maloney on the undercard for WBC interim status at super flyweight. And you're going to have Nina Hughes, reigning WBA bantamweight champion Nina Hughes, defend her title against Sherika Johnson.
That's what I told you.
I told you 2 weeks ago that this fight was going to land on the undercard of Lomachenko versus Kambosos. Nina Hughes, reigning WBA champion, former matchroom fighter, former Let's Go management fighter, is going to be a traveling champion in this match. She's going to be the away fighter. This is going to be her first fight since leaving matchroom, her first fight since leaving Let's Go management, her first fight as a Lou DiBella entertainment fighter.
I'm sorry to say she might not win this thing.
There is potential banana skin energy here.
Yes.
There is potential banana skin energy in a Sherika Johnson fight, former IBF super bantamweight champion Sherika Johnson, who has since moved down in weight from 122 down to 118.
She can fight.
She's a little taller, a little longer, a bit more athletic, quicker to the draw, and 12 years younger than Nina Hughes. It's a good fight. It's a good fight. For those of you out there who may not have already seen Nina Hughes in action, Nina Hughes is best described as an aggressive puncher, a mid-range to inside puncher, who fights out of a wide stance. She's got a wide base, which allows her to be a tricky target, mid-range to inside, bending at the waist, bending at the knees, changing levels when she does it. But it does slow her down a bit.
Inching forward.
Stalking her opponent, inching forward, out of that wide base, jabbing her way in. If she can get in, when she can get in.
She can do some damage. She's a strong puncher.
Though I fear that her feet may be too slow for Sherika Johnson, who, as stated, is a little taller, little longer, bit more athletic, lighter on her feet.
12 years younger, so her reflexes are fresher.
She can bang a bit on the inside and box from the outside.
She can.
Saw that in the Suzy Ramadan fight, the Suzy Q fight, on the undercard of what was George Kambosos versus Devine Haney.
Sherika can handle herself mid-range to inside. She can.
What makes her a dangerous opponent, however, what makes her a dangerous opponent, a potential banana skin for Nina Hughes, is that if she decides to stay on her toes the majority of the fight,
On the balls of her feet?
that will make it that much harder for Nina Hughes to get close to her. That will make it harder for Nina to step into her sweet spot. Nina is a mid-range to inside fighter. She's very capable there.
Strong.
She has to get there first. And if Sherika Johnson is bouncing in and out, on her toes, moving around, it'll make it that much harder for Nina. Sherika has a bit more height, bit more length to slip and counter, roll and counter. She doesn't need to be close to Nina Hughes to touch her, whereas Nina, she does. The assignment where Nina Hughes has to try and close the distance, all Sherika has to do is keep it. All she has to do is keep distance. And don't forget, this is going down in Perth. This is going down in Australia. It will be Sherika that has home field advantage, not Nina.
So what's Nina got to do?
Do her best to close the distance, draw Sherika Johnson out into exchanges, force her to trade.
That's her best bet.
Mid-range to inside is where Nina Hughes does her best work, getting off those combinations, those flurries.
Nina has to get close to her.
Nina Hughes has to close the distance where Sherika has to keep it. She has to keep distance, manage it, move around, use the ring, pot shot, stay behind the jab. Don't give up your height, don't give up your length.
Straight punches.
Nina's shorter
Yes.
than Sherika Johnson is, so she can nail her with straight punches from the outside
Yes.
at a safe distance
Yes.
while moving around.
It's a good fight.
But it's a fight where the title could end up changing hands. It very well could. The WBA title may be transferred from Nina Hughes over to Sherika Johnson.
First look.
I'm leaning towards Sherika. I'm leaning towards Sherika Johnson on points. We'll talk more about the fight as the fight date approaches. In other news, on the heels of Anthony Joshua's big knockout win over former UFC champion Francis Ngannou, another UFC fighter, another UFC champion, former champion, Nate Diaz said, Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, I'll whoop all your asses, just so you know.
No, you won't.
Not in a boxing ring, not anywhere. You know, a lot of UFC fighters, a lot of mixed martial artists pride themselves on being able to use their other extremities. You know, not just their hands, but their legs, grappling, wrestling.
We've often broached this subject.
Why is Nate Diaz threatening Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, and Tyson Fury? Why is he doing this? Because his pride just took a hit. The collective pride of mixed martial artists and those who feel that MMA is supposed to be a superior combat sport, a superior sport to boxing, it really doesn't seem that way when Anthony Joshua takes care of Francis Ngannou so easily.
They think boxing is simple. They think boxing is easy until they have to box, until they have to do it.
If mixed martial arts is so far ahead of boxing in terms of efficiency, then surely mastering boxing, that should be a piece of cake for a mixed martial artist,
Yeah.
a UFC champion, and time again we see that
No.
it isn't a piece of cake.
No.
It isn't easy.
Did you see how Nate Diaz looked against Jake Paul?
Now when Nate Diaz says that he'd kick Tyson Fury's ass, or Wilder's ass, or Anthony Joshua's ass, he's talking about it in an octagon, I'd wager. He's not talking about a boxing ring. He's talking about cage fighting.
But none of those guys are worried about cage fighting. Why would they be cage fighting? They make so much more money in a boxing ring.
You would too, if you knew how to box, but you don't.
We saw you box. We don't want to see you again.
All this animosity, all this hostility that mixed martial arts fans have towards boxing and mixed martial artists themselves, the fighters, the hostility they have towards boxing is tantamount to penis envy.
We've got the biggest stick.
Boxing's got the bigger dick.
Are you gonna bring up the street fighting scenario? The street fight?
Oh.
The token street fighting scenario where, in a street fight, the mixed martial artist can use a Boston Crab,
General Tao's Kimura. Kung Pao Chicken.
the token street fighting scenario that you always hear about from MMA fans and some MMA fighters, that in a street fight, a quote-unquote real fight, the MMA fighter would win.
Oh.
No, in a street fight, the guy with the knife that stabs you in the stomach, that's the guy that wins. In a street fight, I mean a real street fight, a real fight, because that's what MMA fighters like to fall back on. A real fight. Well, in a real fight, knife comes out. There ain't no rules in a street fight, my friend. There ain't no rules in a quote-unquote real fight. See, you're telling yourself that what you do in the octagon is a real fight, but there's a referee right there.
There's rules.
There are rules in mixed martial arts the same way there are rules in the sport of boxing. There are rules.
There ain't no rules in the street, sweetheart.
An aluminum bat across the face will tell you that. 2 shots to the melon. The first thing you want to do is stop talking about a street fight, because MMA fighting ain't street fighting. You're not in the street. There ain't no rules in the street, but there are rules in mixed martial arts. There are rules in the octagon, whether it's the UFC's octagon or the PFL's or Bellator's. There are rules.
There ain't no rules in the street. There's nothing to stop a guy from beating you over the head with a brick.
And this ain't a karate movie. This ain't an action movie.
There ain't no Donnie Yen around here.
No stylized violence, no choreographed fight scenes, no plot, no synopsis. A street fight in the street. A fight could end very quickly. I should say an altercation. An altercation can end very abruptly before it even becomes a fight. So get all the Hong Kong movies out of your head, because that's not what's going on out there.
All that chop suey crap.
You're not a street fighter. You fight in a controlled environment, the same as a boxer.
You fight for prizes. That makes you a prize fighter. The same as a boxer.
Where you're different is boxers, people in boxing, They make a lot more than you do.
It's the truth.
They make a lot more than you do. So, why are you doing a sport that you claim is a harder sport than boxing for less money than you could make if you were boxing?
Why?
And it's because
Why?
you can't box. You can't make it as a boxer. If you could, you would, and you'd earn more money for it.
But you can't.
You want to know what MMA is? You want to know what mixed martial arts really is?
Yeah.
Mixed martial arts is a combat sport for guys who can't box. Guys who ain't got no hands, but watch too many karate movies.
That's what MMA is.
Guys who ain't got the chin to make it in boxing, the punch resistance, the pain threshold. Guys who ain't got the snap on the jab, the reflexes, the hand-eye coordination to make it as boxers, the cardio to make it as boxers.
What?
These MMA guys take shots at boxing all the time, but boxing don't waste time on them. You don't see boxers worrying about the octagon or worrying about MMA.
Trashing their sport.
No, you don't really see boxers doing that. It's always the other way around. Whether it's mixed martial arts fans or mixed martial artists themselves, the shots, they're always taking shots at boxing.
So let's have at it.
Let's just be completely honest about something here. MMA fighters are not street fighters. What you see in that cage, that's not what you'll see in the street.
You'll sooner see the knife come out in the street or the gun come out in the street.
Broken bottle over the head, broken glass in the abdomen. That's what you'll see in the street. You ain't street fighters. You're prize fighters. That's what you are. You're prize fighters like boxers are prize fighters. The difference is the prizes in boxing, they're a lot bigger.
And that's why you're jealous.
That's not to say that your average MMA fighter can't beat the hell out of your average guy, but the same can be said about a boxer.
I've seen more street fights end from a right cross across the jaw than any of that shit from the octagon. Go ahead, take it to the ground in a street fight like they do in mixed martial arts. Go ahead, take it to the ground in a street fight and see if the guy you're fighting's buddies don't stomp you into the pavement. If they don't kick you right in the fucking face.
Gotta stop idealizing real combat situations in real time, because in real time, anything can happen and anything can come out.
Stop it.
You guys have been watching too many Chuck Norris movies.
Van Damme.
This ain't the fucking Kumite. You ain't the Nuke Sioux cow.
Enough about the street fighter, right?
Finally, more doom and gloom from boxing insider Rick Glaser, who says, let's do a little math.
Mom.
In the first 4 months of the year, PBC will have one show, Zoo versus Thurman, March 30th, and Golden Boy will have done 8 shows in that same time period. Contrary to what some want to believe, Golden Boy Promotions is a very well-run company. By the way, I used simple math.
Do it.
Last year, the PBC on Showtime, back when Showtime was still in boxing, they did about 19 shows. Some were pay-per-views, some were regular shows on regular Showtime, but they did about 19 of them. This year, they may be down to just 8 to 10.
I thought they were doing 12 to 14.
Initially, that's what the story was, that they would be doing 12 to 14 shows on the Amazon Prime platform, though when you consider that 3 to 4 months into the year, they're only doing one show, just one show, at this rate, they may be doing only 8 to 10 shows, a diminishing presence in the sport of boxing.
It's not good.
Though many are still in denial about it when you see that Canelo Alvarez's 3-fight deal has been basically amended to a 1-fight deal, just one fight, the Jaime Munguia fight, and that after that fight, he'll be a free agent.
They're not really signing fighters.
Not really. I mean, consider that Golden Boy Promotions, just the other day, they signed 2 fighters.
More than 2.
No, more than that. They signed Arnold Barboza, they signed Jose Ramirez, they signed Gabriela Fundora, they signed unbeaten up-and-comer Joel Ariarte. That they're still signing fighters means that they can accommodate them if they're still signing them. What is the next wave, the next generation of Golden Boy Promotions fighters to carry the flag, to carry the banner, whereas the PBC, they're not signing unbeaten up-and-comers. They're not signing the next generation, the next wave of PBC fighters. So who's supposed to carry the banner? It's not a lot of new blood and fresh new faces in the PBC stable. It's largely guys in their mid to late 30s, early 40s,
Yeah.
sparsely active.
Yeah.
Rick Glaser often gets a lot of heat for being critical of the PBC and highlighting their situation on his social media, but he's not wrong. The PBC haven't done any shows in January, any shows in February. They're only doing one this month.
One.
None the following month.
None.
None in April.
None that they've announced.
Where this time last year, from January into March, they did about 5 shows. Now they're down to just one.
It's a diminishing presence in the sport.
The shows they are doing, they're double stuffing them with what notoriable fighters, what familiar faces they have.
I told you they were going to do this.
And I told you last year, they're going to double stuff the cards. They're going to have to make them as appealing to the consumer as possible, so they're going to double stuff them. That's why you're getting Sebastian Fundora and Keith Thurman, Rolly Romero, Isaac Cruz, Lara. That's why you're getting guys that would normally be headlining their own shows, all stuffed on the same card.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
I don't think it's a bad thing, but it is a deviation from what they would normally do, because normally Sebastian would be headlining his own show, Lara, Rolly.
Tim Tszyu versus Keith Thurman as a main event is not strong enough to sell itself, so you have to add something to that.
You think about the upcoming Gervonta Davis versus Frank Martin fight, that show. David Benavidez's fight with Alexander Vosdik is set to be added to that show. The rematch between Rayo Valenzuela and Edwin De Los Santos, that's supposed to be landing on that same show as well.
A double stuff in a card to make it more appealing.
You just wonder if they shouldn't have been doing this the whole time, when Showtime was still in the picture, and Fox.
It's a long conversation.
But they're definitely operating at a reduced capacity. They're doing less shows than they did last year, less overall, and that will result in a diminishing presence in the sport of boxing. The three-fight deal, what was the three-fight deal with Canelo, is now just a one-fight deal, and we don't know if he's going to do any business with them, continue to do any business with them afterwards, beyond the Munguia fight.
At the turn of the year, they at least had 2 Canelo Alvarez fights to fall back on. Now they've just got one.
And it's not encouraging, where the PBC seemed to have only one show several months into the year. Golden Boy will have about 8. Top Rank's done a bunch of shows, Matchroom, Queensbury.
And they've already announced other shows that they're doing from the spring into the summer.
Rick Glaser often gets a lot of pushback for highlighting this stuff. In truth, I get that same pushback on my own social media.
Yeah, people get upset when you point it out.
They're operating at a reduced capacity, and if this keeps up, I don't know how they're going to survive. Now, what they need is a broadcast partner.
A committed broadcast partner, because Amazon Prime isn't. The fight between Tim Tszyu and Keith Thurman is about 2 weeks away, and I've seen next to no advertising, nothing on Amazon's social media, on the Amazon Prime platform.
Nada.
Nothing.
The whole virtue of jumping into bed with Amazon Prime, as opposed to DAZN, who were interested in picking up the PBC and expanding their catalog of fights, the whole virtue of going to Amazon instead of them was supposed to be the marketing arm of Amazon, that they have so many more subscribers, they can reach that many more homes, but can't reach anyone if they're not marketing the fight to anyone. I haven't seen a single ad or a single banner, a single anything in reference to the Tszyu versus Thurman show, which is a little over 2 weeks away.
So how do they expect to sell it?
What that communicates to me is that the people at Prime aren't all that interested, all that invested. They are non-committal to their boxing content, at least in America.
At least when it comes to that show.
Maybe we'll see more of a push for the Canelo versus Munguia fight. Maybe.
It's not looking good, man.
It's not.